When fear takes over, it doesn't whisper, it screams. It controls your breath, your heartbeat, your thoughts. It convinces you that danger is everywhere, even when there's none. But fear is not the enemy, it's a shadow cast by your own mind. When you stop running from it and turn around to face it, you'll realize that the shadow was never as big as it seemed. The moment you choose courage over fear, life stops being a battlefield and becomes a journey of discovery. Fear is born within the mind, it has no real existence outside of it. It grows only when you feed it with your imagination, your doubts, and your insecurities. The moment you start believing the stories your mind creates, fear takes control. It blinds you to truth, making you see danger in places where none exists. Every time you run from fear, you make it stronger, and every time you face it, you weaken its grip. The real prison is not the situation you fear, but the thoughts that convince you that you cannot face it. Courage does not mean being fearless, it means acting in spite of fear. Those who wait for fear to disappear before taking a step never move forward in life. Courage is born when you decide that your purpose is greater than your fear. Each time you choose to act while fear trembles inside you, you reclaim your strength. You discover that fear only has the power you allow it to have. The more you move through it, the less it can touch you. Courage is not a loud roar, it is a quiet decision to rise even when everything inside you wants to hide. The roots of fear lie in the unknown. What you do not understand, you imagine as dangerous. This is why awareness is the greatest weapon against fear. When you bring full attention to what you fear, you begin to see it clearly without exaggeration. Fear loses its shape under the light of understanding. You realize that most of what you feared was never real, it was only the mind's projection. Knowledge and awareness dissolve the fog that fear creates, and what remains is truth. Every time you choose courage, you break one more chain that holds you back. Growth does not come from comfort, it comes from stepping into the fire and learning that you will not be burned. Fear keeps your life small, while courage expands your world. The path of courage is not easy, but it is the only path that leads to freedom. When you take a breath and walk into what you once avoided, you meet a version of yourself that is stronger, wiser, and unshaken. Beyond fear lies clarity, strength, and peace. The moment you stop running, fear loses its power. Breath becomes your anchor, awareness becomes your weapon, and courage becomes your guide. To choose courage is to align with truth, to act from strength rather than weakness. Every fear you face is an invitation to freedom. When you face it with open eyes and a steady heart, you no longer live as a victim of your thoughts, you live as the master of them. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the strength to move forward while fear still lives within you. Fear does not vanish for the brave, it walks beside them. The difference is that they do not let it dictate their choices. They understand that fear is a signal, not a stop sign. It is the body's reminder that something important is at stake. Instead of running, they face it head on, transforming that same fear into the fuel that pushes them ahead. True courage rises not in the calm but in the storm, when every part of you screams to retreat, yet you take another step. Fear will always test your limits, whispering that you are not strong enough or ready enough. But courage answers that voice with action. It does not wait for perfect conditions or certainty. It walks through confusion, pain and doubt, refusing to surrender. Each time you act while afraid, you strip fear of its power. You learn that it cannot destroy you, it can only distract you. Those who choose courage are not fearless, they are aware that fear will follow them, but they continue anyway. The measure of a person is not how they behave when life is easy, but how they stand when fear surrounds them. To act courageously means to accept fear's presence without allowing it to control your direction. Fear might shake your hands, make your heart race, and cloud your thoughts, yet courage is the quiet force that tells you to keep moving. Every step taken in fear's presence becomes an act of victory, a declaration that you are stronger than your doubts. Courage transforms fear into clarity. When you face what terrifies you, the fog begins to lift. You begin to see that the monsters your mind created were never as large as you imagined. The energy once trapped in anxiety turns into focus and determination. Through courage, you stop being a prisoner of your emotions and start becoming the master of them. Fear loses its meaning when confronted by awareness and choice. Every courageous act builds a foundation of strength that no fear can shake. It teaches you to trust yourself even when nothing feels certain. Fear may always exist in some form, but courage changes your relationship with it. It becomes a reminder of your depth, not your weakness. To live with courage is to walk through fear and discover that your spirit was never fragile. It was only waiting to be tested. Fear feeds on the mind's imagination. It is rarely about what is in front of you, but almost always about what could be. The mind creates endless stories of danger, loss and failure, building worlds that may never exist. These imagined possibilities grow into powerful emotions that feel real even when there is no real threat. The mind does not distinguish between imagination and reality. What you think deeply enough, it believes fully. This is why fear often feels so heavy. It is not the present moment that weighs on you, but the load of imagined futures you carry on your shoulders. When imagination turns dark, fear becomes its offspring. You begin to picture everything that could go wrong, every step that could lead to pain or humiliation. The more you focus on these images, the more vivid they become, until you start living inside your own creation. The world outside may be peaceful, but inside your mind, storms rage without pause. You are trapped in what might happen instead of what is happening. This is how fear silently takes control, by replacing reality with illusion. The power of imagination can either destroy or liberate you. When used without awareness, it creates fear that paralyzes you. But when guided by consciousness, the same imagination can become a source of vision and creativity. What you imagine with awareness becomes inspiration. What you imagine without awareness becomes anxiety. The difference lies in your ability to see that imagination is just a tool, not the truth. It was given to you to create possibilities, not prisons. To free yourself from fear, you must bring your attention back to the present. Look around and see what actually exists, not what your mind predicts. Most of the things you fear never happen, and the few that do are rarely as unbearable as you imagine. The mind exaggerates pain before it even arrives, turning small challenges into unbearable burdens. When you stay rooted in the moment, you see that fear has no real ground. It only survives when you wander into the future. When imagination serves awareness, fear disappears. You begin to use the same creative energy to build strength instead of weakness. The mind that once showed you endless threats now shows you infinite possibilities. The shift is simple but profound. Stop imagining what can destroy you and start imagining what can build you. When you take control of your imagination, fear no longer drives your life, you do. Awareness is the light that exposes the roots of fear. When fear arises, it gains strength only because you resist it or try to escape from it. The more you fight it, the more it grows. But when you turn your attention toward it with clarity, without judging or labeling it as good or bad, its power begins to dissolve. Fear lives in darkness, in the unexamined corners of your mind. The moment you bring awareness to it, that darkness loses its force. Awareness does not destroy fear by struggle, it destroys it by understanding. When you become fully aware of your fear, you stop being a victim of it. You can see the sensations in your body, the thoughts in your mind, and the tension in your breath, all happening within you. You begin to realize that fear is not something outside trying to attack you, it is a reaction within you. By observing it without running, you take back your power. You separate yourself from the emotion and watch it as an experience, not as your identity. This simple act of awareness breaks the bond between you and fear. The nature of awareness is stillness, and fear cannot survive stillness. When your mind becomes silent, fear has no movement to feed on. The energy that was once scattered in panic becomes focused and calm. You begin to see fear for what it truly is, a temporary wave in the ocean of your consciousness. You are not the wave, you are the ocean. This realization changes your entire relationship with fear. It no longer dominates you because you have seen its temporary nature. Awareness transforms fear into understanding. Instead of reacting blindly, you begin to respond with clarity. You can feel fear arise but choose not to obey it. You can feel the body tense but allow it to relax through conscious breath. This awareness is not resistance, it is intelligent observation. It makes you conscious of every emotion, every thought and every impulse that fear triggers. The moment you can watch fear without becoming it, you have already won. When awareness becomes your natural state, fear loses its home. It cannot live where there is light, presence and clarity. Awareness teaches you that fear is not an enemy to fight, but an illusion to see through. The one who lives with awareness walks through fear untouched. They move through life with calm intensity, not because fear is gone, but because they no longer serve it. Fear may still visit, but awareness ensures it never stays. Fear grows strongest where there is ignorance. When you do not understand something, the mind immediately fills the gap with assumptions, doubts and worst possibilities. Ignorance leaves empty spaces that fear is eager to occupy. You start to imagine dangers where none exist, and confusion becomes the soil in which fear thrives. The unknown feels threatening because you have not yet looked at it deeply enough to see what it truly is. Once light is brought to darkness, the darkness disappears, not because you fought it, but because you understood it. Ignorance blinds the mind and limits your perception. When you lack understanding, you respond to life not with clarity, but with panic. You see shadows and believe them to be monsters because you never dared to step closer. This distance between what you know and what you imagine creates fear. The mind hates uncertainty and prefers even false answers over silence. In that desperation, it creates fearful images to make sense of what it cannot grasp. That is why knowledge and awareness are the greatest destroyers of fear. They give you the power to see clearly. Understanding yourself is the first step toward freedom from fear. When you know the patterns of your mind, the triggers of your emotions, and the nature of your reactions, you stop being controlled by them. Fear feeds on confusion, but awareness brings order to chaos. You begin to see that most fears are not caused by the world, but by your own unexamined thoughts. By turning inward and understanding your mind, you cut fear off at its root. What once seemed terrifying now becomes simply something to understand, not something to escape. Ignorance about life also creates unnecessary suffering. When you do not understand the nature of life, you cling to illusions, security, permanence and control. Fear is born the moment you try to hold on to what is constantly changing. When you understand that life is fluid and uncertain by nature, fear loses its grip. You stop demanding that life be safe and predictable and instead learn to move with its rhythm. Understanding transforms fear into acceptance, and acceptance gives birth to strength. The more you know, the less room there is for fear to live. When knowledge replaces confusion, fear has nothing to hold on to. Awareness creates light, and in that light, ignorance cannot survive. The person who seeks truth does not escape fear, they dissolve it through understanding. Every step toward clarity is a step away from fear. When you understand life deeply, fear becomes powerless, and in its place rises a quiet confidence that nothing unknown can disturb you anymore. Fear thrives in ignorance because it survives where there is no understanding. When the mind does not know what lies ahead, it begins to create its own fearful stories. Ignorance leaves the mind restless, and in that darkness, fear grows like a shadow with no form. The more disconnected you are from awareness, the more easily fear manipulates your thoughts. It thrives in the unknown, feeding on confusion and uncertainty. The less you understand yourself and life, the more control fear gains over you. It becomes a master of your actions, making you doubt your strength and your path. When you begin to understand yourself deeply, fear starts to crumble. Awareness is the weapon that tears through the fog of ignorance. The moment you recognize that fear is nothing but a reaction of your mind, it loses its authority. When you know how your thoughts rise, how your emotions shift, and how your body reacts, fear no longer surprises you. It becomes something you can watch rather than something you drown in. Knowledge of self brings light, and fear cannot survive where there is light. Life itself becomes less frightening when you understand its nature. You realize that change, loss, and uncertainty are not punishments but part of existence. When you resist what is natural, fear is born. When you accept it, peace takes its place. Understanding life's movement teaches you that nothing is permanent, not even fear. Every emotion, every challenge, every dark moment passes. When this truth becomes clear, fear loses its foundation. You stop being a victim of what may happen and start living fully in what is happening. Ignorance makes you seek control over everything, but understanding teaches you that control is an illusion. You begin to move through life with awareness instead of anxiety. Fear thrives when you try to control the uncontrollable, but when you surrender to awareness, you see that fear was never needed. It was only a symptom of not knowing. When you live with understanding, you stop wasting energy fighting shadows. You begin to act with calm precision even in moments that once terrified you. As your understanding grows, fear finds no place to hide. It cannot live in a mind that sees clearly or a heart that accepts life as it is. Ignorance breeds insecurity, but understanding breeds strength. When you know who you are and understand the flow of life, fear becomes powerless. It may still whisper, but it no longer commands. You begin to live with a quiet courage, not because fear has disappeared, but because wisdom has taken its place. Fear is the wall that stands between who you are and who you are meant to become. It locks you inside the comfort of the known, where everything feels safe but nothing truly grows. The mind convinces you that staying where you are is protection, yet it slowly kills your potential. Fear disguises itself as logic, whispering reasons to wait, to delay, to hold back. But growth demands discomfort. No transformation is born from ease. The moment you challenge fear, even slightly, the process of becoming stronger begins. Every step taken beyond fear reshapes you. When you face what terrifies you, a new power awakens within. You start realizing that fear was never an enemy, but a test of your readiness to evolve. It shows you the limits you have built and dares you to cross them. Growth is never found in repeating the same patterns, it is found when you break them. Each act of courage stretches your capacity to live fully. The person you become after conquering fear is not the same as the one who avoided it. Fear creates illusions that keep you small. It convinces you that failure is the end, rejection is unbearable, and uncertainty is dangerous. Yet every person who has ever achieved greatness has walked through those same fears. The difference is that they refused to stop. They used fear as a signpost pointing toward growth. What you fear the most often hides the lesson you most need to learn. When you step into that space, fear transforms into strength and weakness turns into wisdom. Growth demands that you step into uncertainty. It is only in the unknown that your potential expands. Staying in the same comfort zone might keep you safe, but it also keeps you stagnant. You cannot evolve without risk, and you cannot discover your power without walking through fear. When you take that step, the world begins to open up in ways you never imagined. Opportunities reveal themselves not to the fearful, but to those who dare to move despite trembling hands. Every great transformation in life begins at the edge of fear. Once you move past it, you see how small it really was. The limits you believed were real dissolve in the light of experience. Growth does not come to those who wait for courage, it comes to those who act even when afraid. Each time you break through fear, you rise to a higher level of strength and awareness. The path beyond fear is not just where growth happens, it is where life truly begins to unfold. Breath is the bridge between the mind and the body, between chaos and stillness. When fear takes hold, the first thing it seizes is your breath. It becomes shallow, rapid and uneven, feeding the storm within. The body tenses, the heart races and the mind loses clarity. In that moment, you are no longer in control, fear drives every reaction. But the moment you take back control of your breath, you begin to take back control of your mind. A steady breath is not just air moving through your lungs, it is your anchor in the storm. When you breathe consciously, fear starts to lose its strength. Deep, deliberate breathing slows down the racing thoughts that fear creates. It signals the body that there is no danger, allowing the mind to regain its balance. In this stillness, you begin to see fear for what it truly is, an emotional wave, not a permanent state. Every slow breath is a reminder that you are present, that you are alive and that you are not a prisoner of your emotions. Breath becomes the tool through which awareness returns. Fear feeds on chaos, but the breath restores order. When your breathing is steady, your awareness sharpens. You begin to observe your thoughts instead of drowning in them. The rhythm of the breath pulls you out of the confusion that fear creates. In that quiet rhythm, you find space to think, to see, and to respond instead of react. Breath is not just a physical act, it is the thread that connects your consciousness to the moment. Through it, the fog of fear begins to lift and clarity emerges like sunlight through a storm. The power of breath lies in its simplicity. It requires no training, no tool, no time, it only demands awareness. Each deep inhalation fills you with strength, and each slow exhalation releases the tension that fear builds. The more you breathe consciously, the more your body remembers calm as its natural state. Fear cannot live long in a body that is at ease, nor in a mind that is aware. The simple act of mindful breathing turns fear from a master into a momentary visitor. When fear rises again, the breath will always be your first ally. It reminds you that you are not powerless and that control begins within. No matter how strong the fear, the breath remains steady, waiting for you to return to it. It does not fight the fear, it dissolves it. With each conscious breath, you reclaim your presence, your strength and your peace. The storm outside may continue, but within there is silence, and in that silence, fear cannot survive. Courage aligns you with truth because it removes the layers of fear that distort your perception. Fear clouds judgment, twists reality, and makes you see threat where there is none. It fills your mind with hesitation and your heart with uncertainty. When you choose courage, those illusions begin to fall away. You no longer see through the lens of insecurity, you see through the clarity of understanding. Courage allows you to face what is real, not what your fear imagines. It is through this confrontation with truth that inner strength takes root and grows unshaken. Freedom lies beyond fear because fear is the invisible chain that keeps the human spirit bound. It limits movement, silences expression, and blinds vision. A person trapped in fear cannot truly live, they only survive from one safe moment to another. Every decision becomes filtered through caution, every dream weighed down by doubt. Fear makes you a prisoner of your own mind, convincing you that safety is the same as peace. But safety built on fear is not peace, it is captivity. True freedom begins only when you dare to step beyond the walls that fear has built within you. When you move through fear, something extraordinary happens. You discover that the danger was never as powerful as your imagination made it. The moment you act in spite of fear, it begins to crumble. What once felt impossible becomes attainable. Courage opens the door that fear tried to keep closed. Freedom is not found by running away from fear, but by walking directly through it. The energy once trapped in fear transforms into strength, clarity, and purpose. You begin to realize that fear was never a barrier, it was a threshold to cross. When you choose courage, you are not fighting fear, you are dissolving it. Courage is the light that makes fear disappear. Each time you face what frightens you, a new door opens inside. Life rewards the brave, not because they never fear, but because they refuse to bow before it. So when fear takes over, do not run, stand still, breathe deeply and choose courage. That single choice can change the course of your entire life.